0.3%. And I set the benchmark at actually 76.92. And that's because we don't pay the same amount every month. We have 2 months out of the year where we have 3 payrolls. So really we're like, it's like 21 out of 26 payrolls through the year. So that's really the benchmark we're at. So really salaries look good, and that's the biggest part of it. So it looks like that we'll definitely be under budget for that, but we're still progressing at a reasonable rate. Look at the other categories, benefits, 880,000. We're spending at 79, or excuse me, almost 70% is spent, which is it's right under budget. It's perfectly on track. That looks fine. Purchase services again is under 70%. Same with supplies. The supplies especially, and they've been kind of holding on to spending supplies and really only getting the stuff that they really need to have. So we're expecting that to be definitely under budget. Capital outlay is 84% spent, and so you might say, well, that's over 75% spent, but really they buy most of their capital outlay stuff at the beginning of the year, so there's really not a whole lot of more expenses that they're going to have by the end of the year. When you look at other is essentially like dues. That's our bond payments that we make. So we're right at around 75, but that doesn't really matter because we have a bond schedule that we have to go by, and we're right on track with that. Tuition is technically a different category, and that looks fantastic. So far we're 70%, and that's our tuition for CEDAL students. So when we send special education students to CEDAL, we have to pay tuition, and right now we're under budget, which is fantastic because it costs a lot of money. Again, for more visual learners, you can see there's a graph there showing, that we're the budget benchmark, and then how much we've actually are. We're under on each of those, or except for capital outlay. But that's kind of what it looks like. So if you're looking at expenses, it looks very positive because we're on budget and we're on track to be under budget by the end of the year. Now, don't forget, we still have a deficit budget, so we'll be under expenses, but we'll definitely be in deficit spending. And to give you an idea of where we are in deficit spending, if you look at the next page, revenues versus expenditures, if we're looking at how much money we're getting in versus how much is going out, our whole budget, you can see we've got a deficit of about 671,000 for the year. I did a benchmark, and it's really a stupid number. It's trying to say, well, what's 75% of that? So if we're going regular on track, where would we maybe be? Maybe 335,000 in the hole. Well, you can see actually we're 1.9 million in the hole right now, and that's again because of the local property tax that we'll get in June. So that will change significantly, but we wanted to see that, yeah, while revenue looks okay, we don't quite have quite as much state and federal money as we want to have. And the expenses look really good in that they're under budget a little bit. That doesn't mean that we're cool. We got tons of money. We're still definitely deficit spending right now. And that leads me to show you kind of our cash and fund balance. The difference between fund balance and cash is very, very little difference. The real difference is like payables. So we have outstanding checks. That's kind of what the difference you see between fund balance and cash. Fund balance takes out all those outstanding checks that are out there. So you can see our fund balance Q1, Q2, Q3. You can kind of see it go down. And again, I put a little line in there for you to see. Our fund balance steadily is going down. It's because we are spending more than what we get. So our fund balance is going to go way down. But you can kind of see cash. You kind of see cash doesn't quite keep the same trend as Q3. And that's the difference is there is the $1 million TAW that we did. That's for us to have enough cash to operate and to pay our bills and to do that through the year. Some districts that are very close on revenue and don't have as high of a fund balance have to borrow. Like Beach Park borrows, they borrow like $5 million. We borrowed $1 million, which is double from the $500,000 that we borrowed last year. But again, that was due to the major cut in funding from the state of Illinois. So those are kind of the things I wanted to give you. And also I put on there just a figure to show you how much the state owes us. So there's money that they've said we need to give this to you, but they're not giving it to us. As of 4/20, when I put this together, they owed us $234,000. I literally just checked before this meeting, and they owe us like $219,000. And that mostly is because they gave us a $15,000 general state aid payment, that's a regular thing they give us. Twice a month we get $15,000 from them. But we're still, $219,000 that they're just not giving us right now. There's really not much we can do to get it back. So that's kind of my brief overview of what's going on in the district with finances this quarter. And these are the 3 quarters combined, so if you have any questions, I'd love to answer. If you got more specific questions, I might have to get back to you, but you can try it if you want, so I'll do that up if anybody's interested.
Anybody have any questions?
I have questions about consent items on the agenda that pertain to the budget. Should I wait until?
Yeah, that's not part of it. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, we looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda items, which is the approval of this agenda, the resignation of Charlie Upton, the resignation of Denise Cleveland, the expenditure report for March, the revenue report for March, the treasurer's report for March, payment of bills and reimbursements for April, and student activity reports for March. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Excuse me. Are you supposed to ask if there are any board members who would like to have any of the budget items removed from consent and discussed under action at the next board meeting?
This is your time to do that.
Okay. I have several items that I would like to have removed from the consent agenda items and put on action for discussion at our next meeting. Number 1, I noticed that there was an $837 purchase of a saxophone for Kyle Barron, and I'm wanting to know if that is now the property of the school. Yeah, this is April. We're looking to approve April's budget.
You just saying
Go
so.
ahead and answer that. Yeah, you can answer that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it belongs to the school. It was purchased through band booster funds.
Okay.
And it was bought used through eBay, which is about half the price of what they normally are.
Okay, beautiful.
And normally what happens is the students have their own instruments, but if you have real expensive instruments, then we'll more likely to have some of those have to be purchased because nobody would play it otherwise.
A lot of times you can lease them too. I know
They
that.
do lease them, but what happens is that we'll get them used, people donate them, and we would buy them used.
Okay, as long as it's property of the school, so that was number 1. The IASB annual subscription job bank for $300, what is that? Is that what you asked me?
IASB job bank.
I mean, that's the job bank that we subscribe to. Ted, I mean, you're the one, you guys use it mostly, it's a great.
Right, I mean, when we go looking for any position, but particularly instructional, the IASB is a statewide job bank, and almost any teacher in the state of Illinois that's looking for a position would be looking through there. It's especially helpful when we kind of run up to a late position and we're like, we don't have very much time to do it, and you get a ton of resumes in. I mean, whenever we've done it, we've had 50 to 100 resumes replied to us within a week on those positions.
So with things like Career Builder and Monster and a lot of the free sites, maybe we could eliminate something like this from our budgets.
It's hard with someone like speech therapy and special ed.
All right.
So we don't find those nearly as well. So some of the things like today, first grade, second grade, third grade teachers, we really wouldn't have to have that as much. But for some of those other jobs that they're really hard, we went, 2 years ago, we went probably 3/4 of a year without speech therapy because we couldn't find anybody. And that's a site that we're more likely to be able to get people on.
Okay, may I ask for that item to be removed and placed on an action item for discussion at a further time? I have a reimbursement for an iPod for Dan Stanley, which included a gift card for $400 for a total purchase of $655.56 for an iPod for Dan Stanley. If this is true, my question is why?
That was from March bills payable, and that was not an iPod for Dan Stanley. That was the district purchased an iPad, their new iPad 2, I think it was for a special ed class that Pat's building purchased, and we had a gift card of $400 for the iPad, but we had to use it online. It was a gift card that you could only use online, so Julie ordered it online, and the rest of it, they wouldn't take our district credit card. For whatever reason, they wouldn't use a corporate credit card to do it, so I just said, well, you can use my credit card and then pay me back. So they put it on my credit card, and then she just paid me back the money after the last meeting. And so, I mean, and that money was, and the money ultimately came from a grant, a federal grant that we had anyways.
So but basically, we paid $655 for an iPad.
it was around 600 or something for that. Well, we have
Well, it was
$400.
an iPad and apps for the iPad, all funded through special education grants.
All right. Another item that I would like to have removed and up for discussion for action is healthcare reimbursement for Paula Hyatt of $1,000. I'm not sure why that would be there. I didn't find anything in the union contract pertaining to that. The other, and along the same lines, I'm noticing that our teachers are getting co-pay reimbursement. So does this imply that when a co-pay is made by a teacher when they visit their doctor's office, that co-pay is repaid through the taxpayers' money?
That's something with the insurance and the contract, correct?
Yeah, but I'll get back to, we can take it off and I'll get back to Ron.
I would like to have that first.
Specifically.
Okay, the Rotary Club memberships, in my opinion, Rotary Club memberships are positions that people volunteer for to become a part of the community, such as doing cancer walks, donating your time, joining the Lions, joining any kind of community service, and all of those things have dues. In the budget for April, we have an approval line item to pay for Dennis Geiser and Pat Hodge of $144 each to join the Rotary. I would like to have those two line items removed and put on discussion for action items for next month.
ISB jump subscription.
That's an association too that really doesn't really contribute anything to children's education.
I'm sorry.
Yes, there's one more thing. $1,200 tuition reimbursement for Dan Stanley, which I think is wonderful. However, if our taxpayers are going to pay for tuition reimbursements for our administrators and for our school teachers, I want to make sure that we're not going to pay for their tuition and then pay for their increased lane. Because when they get a higher education, their lane changes, therefore their salaries increase. So I, as a taxpayer,